with our exploration goals for how to go further into space, but also to bring back benefits for Earth and to produce a commercial marketplace in low Earth orbit. All three of these objectives, along with the international cooperation that it took to build such an amazing laboratory in space, are great examples of the objectives of the ISS program.
Kurt, we know that today's mission is critical to providing us with a steady cadence of operational flights. But why is it so important for us to have this capability from a research perspective?
That's a great question. Today's test flight brings us to the beginning of the commercial crew program, a commercial crew program which will raise our occupancy on the U.S. segment of the space station to 4 astronauts. And that 4th astronaut comes as a real premium to doing research on the space station. The tasks don't get particularly more intensive to do systems and maintenance, so that 4th astronaut, that time becomes dedicated to performing more science. In fact, enough time that it will essentially double the amount of crew time we have to perform experiments on board station. The return to U.S. soil also brings us the ability to return samples more quickly and get human samples back down to the ground more quickly as well.
Kurt, you're talking about all this great research, you're talking about scientific experiments, but what would you say to someone who's watching this and thinking, this isn't relevant to me, I'm never going to space, I don't do science? What do you say to those people?
Well, again, one of the focuses is on the ISS benefits for humanities. And for all of us who've been stuck at home during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been wondering, wouldn't it be nice to have more bandwidth? Why does the internet slow down? Some of the research we're doing on board space station, particularly into Z-band optical fiber, is using the fact that we don't have sedimentation in a microgravity environment to develop new materials that'll help us build more perfect fiber optic cables, which will allow us for better bandwidth and lower cost in implementing networks here on Earth. And then if you're not really a tech geek, maybe your interests lie more in human health. And then we have multiple experiments going on to help us develop new drugs, new treatments on board the ISS. Pharmaceutical companies are working on methods that allow us to crystallize proteins in space in a more purified and more standardized method. And this could lead to monoclonal antibody suspensions that we can treat through injection instead of a painful infusion. We also are developing studies into our capability to produce tissues and organs in space. Again, because you don't have sedimentation, there's a capability there to produce more realistic tissues that can someday possibly be used to prevent human disease.
Now, Kurt, I know they have some cargo going up with them, but I understand they plan to bring some science back.
That's right, Gary. A lot of their cargo going up with them are crew supplies and EVA supplies to support them if they have to do EVAs on board. But the cargo they'll be bringing down is science, and it comes from across the spectrum. We have student experiments in seeds that will be returning with the Crew Dragon. We also have a number of experiments that are dependent on their samples returning in frozen lockers on board the SpaceX Dragon to be able to do the science there. Those include rodent research tissues from the National Lab Rodent Research 17 mission, and also our veggie experiments, which are experiments in growing plants in space that will be needed when we go to more distant locations like the Moon and Mars.
International Space Station Chief Scientist Kurt Costello, thank you so much for your time. Let's hear now from one of the next astronauts to fly to station on a Crew Dragon, talking with Marina Jurica. Marina.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be a part of today's momentous launch. My guest is no stranger to the International Space Station and will return there for the first time in nearly a decade for his 3rd space flight with the Crew 1 launch expected later this year. Having logged 177 days in space from flights on the Space Shuttle Discovery to the Soyuz, JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi will have spent more time in space than any of his other crewmates. It is my pleasure to welcome him here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Soichi. Honjitsu wa arigato gozaimasu.
Wow, that's wonderful. Marina, how are you doing? Thanks for having me today. This is wonderful. Today we are celebrating the launch, so I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here with us. I am sure you have felt the excitement for today's launch, Soichi, and you will be on the next Crew Dragon flight after this one. Are you excited to launch from Kennedy Space Center again, and how are you preparing for this new vehicle?
Yes, definitely we are excited to go back to Kennedy Space Center. My first space flight was from Kennedy Space Center on a Spatial Discovery. That was 15 years ago, but my memory is still fresh. I still feel the vibration of the launch, the same launch pad of 39A that the demo to go up, and the same launch pad that we will go up as a Crew 1. And our crew is getting ready for the final training phase, which will come in the coming weeks. And the mood is really high, and we are ready to go up.
And as you know, the International Space Station and space exploration is an international effort. How do you feel representing the Japanese Space Agency once again on the ISS?
Well, I think the strengths of the International Space Station is the diversity of all the participating countries, and adding diversity is definitely gives a rigidity to the program. And the same applies to our Crew 1. Our Crew 1, we are 4 of us, but quite a different background, quite a different ethnicity, and definitely the diversity is the key word of our success to the Crew 1.
And I'm sure it will be very successful. What are you looking forward to once you get back to the ISS?
Well, this will be my third visit to the International Space Station. I like to see the things my colleagues keep saying, hey, you got to visit the space station again because it's getting more comfortable, more roomy, and I cannot wait to go back to my sleep station after 10 years.
And nothing beats that view, does it?
Oh, definitely. My last flight, we actually installed a big window called the cupola, and that was a big hit, obviously. This is the #1 leisure time for astronauts, and I'm ready to shoot as many photos as I can this time as well.
Amazing. I will look forward to seeing those photos. I'm sure you remember exactly what it feels like in these moments.